So it's 2022, and honestly, I almost didn't do this video because I think the gear that I'm using right now will change over the next few months, but at the same time, the gear that I am using is pretty different from the last time I did a video like this. So I will talk about what gear I have and I'm using right now, how I'm using it, when I'm using it, what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and what I expect might change over the next few months. Alright, so first up, the bag that I'm using, and that is the Lowepro Tactic 350 AW2, and that is of the Lowepro Tactic series, the smaller version. And I really like this because, first of all, it holds a decent amount of gear, but it's also got a really slim profile. So that's important to me because it can fit in the overhead bin, even in like small regional jets. And one of the trips that I fly regularly, one of those legs is always on a regional jet, and so it's important to me to be able to take my gear and be able to have it in the overhead bin and not need to worry about them trying to make me check it under the plane or something like that. So now let's move on to the lenses that I'm using, and this is what I expect to change the most over the next few months and year, because I have actually been planning and taking my time to plan out which lenses I want to get, but the main lens that I'm using right now is still my Sigma EF mount 24-70 f2.8 art lens, and I would say probably 90% of the stuff that I shoot is on this lens. I really like the image quality of this lens, especially at 70mm, which is what I'm using probably the most on this lens. And I will say I definitely like the look of 85mm better than 70mm that I get at the long end of this lens. But one advantage is actually that 70mm on the Sigma lens actually has a much closer minimum focus distance, so typically I can get better magnification than with a lot of 85mm lenses, and then also the versatility of this lens on top of that because of it being a zoom lens from 24-70. Now, I will say I do not like the image quality of this lens at the widest angles. So 24-28mm, it doesn't have very much contrast, and the resolution falls off a lot from what it is throughout the rest of the zoom range, but by 35mm that has cleaned up. And again, it's just a really versatile option, and because I can shoot, like I said, probably around 90% of my work on this lens right now, it's given me the time to just kind of think about what lenses I want and what are going to work best for me and try out several of them and take my time before I actually make purchases of lenses. So then the lenses that I use the most after that are my 24 and 35mm lenses, but I use them for pretty different things. So first off, the 24mm lens, and this is another Sigma Art Series lens, the 24mm Sigma Art f1.4, and that is an EF mount lens. And there is actually right now no native RF 24mm lens options at all. So the Sigma EF Art lens is probably, at least for my money, the best quality for value option that you can have on the RF mount. And what I mainly use this 24mm lens for right now is actually A-roll for my YouTube videos, and I use that because the 24mm on a Super 35 or APS-C sensor is more like a 35mm, which is what I typically like to use, and I'll talk more about that, I guess, when we get to the camera section. And then my 35mm lens is the Canon RF 35mm f1.8. That's the macro IS STM lens. And this lens, I mean, it's really small, compact, great quality, and super versatile with having the image stabilization built in as well as the macro-ish capabilities. You can get about 50% magnification with this lens. And this lens is constantly in my camera bag. No matter what I'm doing, this lens is in there because if all else fails, I know that I can shoot pretty much whatever I need to with this lens if I have to. Then there's the two small RF lenses. That's the RF 50mm f1.8 and 16mm f2.8. And honestly, I don't use these lenses very often. They are small and super light, so if I have extra room in my camera bag, I will tend to bring them because they don't make that much difference in size and weight of the camera bag. But otherwise, unless I think that there's going to be a specific shot or shots that I need them on, I'm probably not going to bring them. And the specific shots that I might need them for is going to tend to apply more to the 16mm because the 50mm I already have that covered with my 24-70 lens. And then there's the 85mm lens, and right now what I'm shooting with is the EF 85mm f1.8, and this is a decent 85mm lens, especially for the price. But if I'm being honest, the 85mm lens, that's what I've been looking into most, trying to figure out which lens is going to work the best for me over the past year or more probably. And this is what I'm most likely to change in the next few months, definitely within the next couple years at the very most. And again, the EF 85 1.8, it's a decent lens for the price, but it's not really what I want. And so I've been looking into, like I said, several options. That's what's most likely to change the soonest. But I am also currently looking at getting more of a actual dedicated macro lens, something like the 100mm macro lenses, figuring out which one of those is going to be the best for me. So that's probably likely to change as well. What I do not have is any super telephoto lenses, anything beyond 85mm, because I just don't shoot that telephoto at all, really. So it wouldn't justify me paying for a super telephoto lens to have basically just for fun. So now the cameras that I'm using, and like probably, I guess 2.5 years ago when I first got the Canon, the original R, I was super excited about that camera because it allowed me to consolidate at the time. So instead of having a main camera for video and a main camera for photography, I had the R, and that was my main camera for everything. And now I'm kind of going in the opposite direction and having different cameras for different use cases. And so I don't really have one camera that's my main camera for everything. I will say my kind of most all-around camera, main camera, would definitely be the R6. And I'm very happy with this camera and what it can do, and it fits my workflow and my needs really, really well. And I really have very few, if any, complaints about it. I've made several videos about why I like it so much and why it works so well for me, and I'll link some of those here if you want to check that out. But it's definitely my main camera for if I'm going out and shooting photos handheld, or even a mixture of photo and video handheld. And regardless of what the project is, it's going to be in my camera bag as at least the B cam for that project. So then to the R that I do still have, and like I said, it's not my main camera for everything anymore, but it is still my main camera for when I'm shooting photos in a studio situation. It's on a tripod. I'm using studio lighting, and the reason that it is still my main camera for that is for a couple reasons, really. One of them being the extra resolution, and I do want to clarify that, because not the extra resolution because my clients need it or because it looks better or anything like that, but just because in those situations when I'm shooting that way, I'm typically compositing several images together to make a final image, and the extra resolution comes in handy specifically when I'm zooming in like 1000% or whatever ridiculous amount to make sure the tiny details are lining up when I'm compositing those images. Then that extra 30% of resolution is a helpful thing to have. Also, the R does not have IBIS, which can be a good thing or a bad thing. In a lot of situations, it's probably more of a bad thing. But in this situation, when you're on a tripod with the R6, in between shots, and definitely when you turn the camera on and off, the sensor can actually shift, and that's going to throw off your images. Even just slightly is going to mess up your compositing image workflow, which again is what I would typically be doing in this situation. And you could turn off the in-body image stabilization of the R6 and probably not have to worry about that, but with the R, it doesn't have that, so I don't have to worry about making sure that I remember to turn the image stabilization off and then making sure that I remember to turn it back on when I go out and I'm shooting something else. So really I'm just using the R because I don't have to think about that with the IBIS, and again, extra resolution. And then the last camera I'm using is my C100, and this is a decade-old cinema camera, and it does oversample from a 4K sensor, but it only outputs a 1080 file. But for things like YouTube and any type of web delivery, because of compression that those platforms are going to have, it actually isn't losing anything from filming in a 1080 file, editing that, and then up-resing that to 4K for uploading the file. And especially since it's a 4K sensor, so you have that 4K amount of detail there already anyway, you're really not going to lose anything. And because of it being 1080, the smaller file sizes, it's really nice for that workflow. And most importantly, it also has cinema camera features. So you have extra exposure tools, you have built-in ND filters, XLR audio input, again, super small file sizes with that 4K downsample to 1080. So for YouTube, it's my main YouTube camera. I use it for interviews and talking head stuff. And I will say it is kind of niche. It's definitely not going to be right for everybody in 2022, but it's perfect for my workflow for what I use it for, and I really love it. So for my computer, what I'm using is still my 13-inch 2019 MacBook Pro, and I did upgrade the RAM memory at the time, and the computer works fine for 4K video in H.264. I do have to use a proxy workflow for H.265 4K video, but the workflow is fine, and it's definitely not bad enough for me to upgrade to one of the newer MacBook Pros right now. Eventually, I do think I will add a desktop Mac solution in addition to my MacBook Pro, and for that, I will wait and get something that has one of the newer M1 chip setups that should definitely handle H.265 files better. But that's probably not going to be anytime soon, probably maybe not even in this year at all. So for audio, there's several options that I'm using right now. First off, for these YouTube videos or anytime I'm doing interviews or any type of talking head audio, what I'm using is the MXL 991 XLR pencil condenser mic. And I've actually had this mic for like over 10 years. It is actually from like my college days as a musician, but pencil condenser mics are actually really good for indoor talking head audio, and I really like the sound that I get with this mic, and especially for like the price point of this mic, it's really great. Although to be fair and completely honest, the only reason I use it is because I already had it, and then I did try it and really liked the audio, so I don't feel a need to switch right now. So for on-camera shotgun mics, I have the Rode VideoMic Pro Plus, and this is definitely the best on-camera shotgun mic option that I have for like mirrorless DSLR cameras. But because anytime that I'm doing A-roll or like any kind of talking audio, I am using the condenser mic into the C100 through the XLR inputs, I'm really only using the on-camera shotgun mics for scratch audio at this point, and because of that, I'm not really particularly worried about the audio quality of my scratch audio, which means that I am using the VideoMic Pro Plus less and less nowadays. So then other options I have for on-camera shotgun mics are the Rode Video Micro and the Movo VXR10 Pro. And I go back and forth with these a lot because I do definitely like the build quality and audio quality of the Movo mic better, but the Rode Video Micro is smaller and it's easier to take apart, easier to pack into a small space in a camera bag, and because again, I'm just using these for scratch audio and I'm not really worried that much about the audio quality, I tend to probably pack the Video Micro more often. So if it's a photography job that I'm doing, I'm definitely going to pack a couple of the Godox 8200 Pros, and these are actually my main flash units that I use because they're super versatile and portable, so they're powerful enough that especially if I'm using two of them together in one modifier, they can easily handle being my key light, and then also small enough that I can throw them into a bag and take them with me for a location shoot as well. And then I also typically, regardless of photo or video, will throw my Aperture MC light into the camera bag because it is really small, really portable, and you have a lot of options with effects and different color temperatures as well as different colors that you can use out of this light. And I'm actually using it here right behind me in this shot, so that doesn't take up a lot of space, really practical, really versatile. So it's typically in the camera bag somewhere. So for tripods, I have the Manfrotto Be-Free 3-way live travel tripod. Although really I just have the tripod head, and then I use it with some other tripod legs that I've had for a while. And I'm not convinced that this is as versatile and portable as people were first saying it was when it came out. It is decent for photo. It's not super versatile for video, and it's also not the easiest to pack for travel. I know the design with it folding down was a cool idea. Implementation, I don't think, is all the way there, and I typically, because of that, end up not taking it unless I know that it's 100% necessary that I have to take it. And then as far as smaller accessories, I did finally get a new USB-C dock, and it's really just a cheap USB-C dock option that I found on Amazon, but it's so much better and so much more reliable than the Otherworld Computing USB-C dock that I had been using for a while. And also way more portable, even though that other one was supposed to be the portable version of the dock. I'm super happy that I got rid of the Otherworld Computing one and went with this cheap option instead. Wish I had done that from the beginning. But anyway, that's really the main things that are in my camera bag this year. But what do you think? What am I missing? Did I forget to mention anything? Is there anything that I should really think about adding to my camera bag? Any accessories or any input that you have on things that I should look into adding to my kit, or things that you have different in your kit? If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you haven't yet, hit the subscribe button, then hit the bell icon so that you can get notified of all the videos that I make here on this channel. If you're interested in purchasing any of the gear that I've talked about throughout this video, in the description below I will have affiliate links. If you purchase through those links at no extra cost to you, it will help to support this channel so that I can continue making videos for you guys. Thanks. See ya.